Hello, Mission Group leaders. I'm Chris Stewart, and I'm here to introduce our second series of the term on Galatians, the people of this second chance. I hope the Soul Detox series went really well. I know it did for me, even personally. But now we are moving on to Galatians. And if I may make a personal suggestion, I did this right before we started writing the curriculum for it. I suggest that you read through all six chapters, five or six, I can't remember exactly, five or six chapters of Galatians in one sitting, because you'll really see the overarching theme of this book, and it is a beautiful one. And I say that to introduce the essential question. I'm going to give you some overarching pointers first off for the whole Galatians series. One being, we forgot to add the essential question into the first curriculum on Galatians 2. So I'm gonna let you know what that is, because I think it's important to know what is the essential question of this series that we're trying to always come back to, or have the theme of each week centered on. Each week, each question, what are we trying to get at? So the essential question, and I'll try to say it slow because it's kind of a big one, because Galatians deals with a huge topic. It says, how does this gospel of second chance fulfill all of history, beginning to end? How does it fulfill all of history, humanity, all of humanity? How does it fulfill it? And your human identity. How does it how does it fulfill all of history, all of humanity and all of history, as well as you as an individual, your identity? How does it change all of that? So I'll say it again without stopping. How does this gospel of second chance fulfill all history, humanity, and your personal human identity? Um, the overarching idea of Galatians is that the Church of Galatia has reverted back to legalism. They were saved by grace, and now they work out how they live by a legalistic practice. And so Paul writes this letter saying, you were saved through the justification of Jesus alone, and that is true even now. You're reverting back is a sin to legalism. You were saved to be free, so why are you going backwards? And I think it's such a great topic to look at individually for a few weeks here as a church, because I'm sure we all have plenty of examples, even in our own lives, of how we revert back to the law and legalism rather than by grace and by Jesus' work on the cross. So let's dive into the first 2 weeks. Specifically, we're looking at the gospel. What is the gospel? In week 1, we're looking at it through the lens of justification. What is justification? Good question. Well, if you go all the way back to the beginning of creation, you'll see that we were created in the image of God, and we were created to find our identity solely in the being of God Himself. And what do? We rebel. We create anarchy, and we go against that king. And what does that do inside of us? It creates this void, because what we were meant to do is find our identity in God, and now we have separated ourselves from God. So in everything we do, we try to make ourselves right. We try to make ourselves righteous. We try to make ourselves just before God. And we do that by trying to justify ourselves through our actions, as well as almost make excuses for our behavior through the way we live. We can go into detail about that, but let's just jump ahead, because that's really what we're dealing with week 1 as we look through Galatians 2. So if you have your curriculum, it's not a bad idea to pull it out, because we'll be talking through that for the next minute or so. Galatians 2, we're looking at justification as the gospel. And not only that, we're looking at how in this situation Paul confronts Peter. You know, Peter, the founder of the church. He confronts Peter by saying, you are no longer living as though the gospel justifies you. And real quickly, this is how we're going to do it. We're going to be looking at what is justification through Jesus alone, and then how does that affect all areas of life? Because we see here that Peter starts no longer eating with Gentiles and does these different Jewish practices because he's justifying himself. He's saying, I need to follow these rules in order to be right with God. And Paul comes in and says, no, you are no longer living. And he says this, you are no longer living in line of the truth of the gospel. And he doesn't just say you are living incorrectly. He says you are no longer living in line with the truth of the gospel. Because this is not just a you're doing wrong, but you no longer believe the gospel of Jesus is what justifies you. So we're going to be this is going to be really fun because we're not just going to be looking in our groups what is or this is Jesus and he justifies us, but we're also going to be looking at our lives as individuals saying what areas of my life do I live legalistically and not through the justification of Jesus. How am I not living uh, in line of the gospel? How am I not living as though Jesus is truly king and justifier of that area of my life? And so I hope that this is a great, maybe series even for you to reflect on your own life and your own heart. I know it's been great for me to use this chance to look at the gospel not only as the overarching justifier, but how I live individually in parts of my life and how I do not live as though I am being justified by Jesus. And then lead our groups in this way. Like, what does it look like if we become a church that can use the gospel to confront every area of our life and to reform it into God and Jesus being king of that area? It would be a glorious thing. And it'd be glorious to be able to use that even as we confront and challenge each other to say, this is how you live in line with the gospel. So I hope this has been helpful. And I can't wait to see you guys all at Mission U, and as well, uh, we'll be praying for you as you go into next week and enter into the Galatians series.